The views expressed in this podcast stems from our passion for the security industry and for the physical security operations. They do not necessarily reflect the views of our employers. Welcome to Security Theater with Scott and Carlos, where we pull back the curtain on the world of security.
I'm Scot Walker, your co-host, with years of experience in the trenches of the military, federal law enforcement, and corporate security.
And I am Carlos Francisco, here to debunk the myths and misconceptions that surround the security industry.
In Security Theater, we dive deep into the realities behind security measures, exposing what's truly effective and what's just for show.
I agree, and we'll tackle controversial topics, interview industry experts, and share stories from our own careers that reveal the often hidden truth about security.
So whether you're a security professional, a curious skeptic, or someone just looking to understand the world of security better, join us every week for a no-holds-barred discussion.
And get ready to see beyond smoke and mirrors. This is Security Theater.
All right, we're back on Security Theater podcast with Gene Traylor, security expert extraordinaire. And we're going to talk about something that's a little heavy right now because it's top of mind. If you are on the socials, you are seeing this live. You're experiencing it. Perhaps a lot of people, at least in our industry, are talking about the employee who passed away in her office in Tempe, Arizona. We won't mention her employer. I'm sure you can look it up. But the facts as we know them today are that she checked into the office on a Friday morning, early morning, and she was found on a Tuesday in her office. And we don't know if that's a cubicle or an office itself or what. That hasn't been released. But she was found deceased after her manager, who had emailed her earlier in the day, couldn't find her, and so they went and located her. And there's a couple of different security aspects here that we want to talk about. First of all, empathy and sympathies to the deceased family always, and we are not going to. This isn't supposed to be emotional or charged, so. But we realize that, and this bothers us as security professionals, perhaps more than just kind of general employees, because all of us on this call, and hopefully everybody in the industry takes this personal. We take the protection of our staff is the most important thing. Staff, customers, guests, all of those things are the most important thing. Property comes second, IP comes second to human life, and we always hate to see that loss. With that said, we have kind of three different perspectives here that we want to share. So let me get started with you, Gene. You saw this from a different angle, a very relevant angle in regards to, we'll just say, security officer processes, security officer procedures, things like that. But tell us, as you're looking at this situation, what are you seeing as some of the concerns here?
Yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions, right? We're all under a speculation umbrella and trying to understand, was this an internal security issue with, that proprietary security force that's within that organization, or was this contracted out with a third party, right? So for me, being in the training realm and really just understanding what it takes to ensure that security staff are equipped to respond to emergencies is really looking at, again, that personnel and their training background. Again, speculating if this was a third-party contract or internal, it doesn't matter. What does the training look like, again, with those guards that are on site, and really just what their emergency response looks like. And for me, if it was a third-party contractor, are there thorough background checks done on those guards? And for me, it's not really a criminal background check. It's really just there's a sense of this reputation of certain security personnel that float from company to company to company, and that's really promoting still that unsafe, bad behavior or reputation of those officers who are being employed by these third parties. And that's a risk within itself there, because if those folks aren't really willing to take in the training and understand what those specific needs are for that site, you're not going to get the best value out of that. And the other part of that for me, I really was questioning is like, what was the scope of services really for those third parties, right? Or if it was an internal proprietary service, what do the coverage areas look like? What needed to be patrolled in and out of that building, right? What needed to be communicated, and really, I think the biggest part for me was, how does a company in 2024 not have the technology to understand or see if someone was in that building? There's a lot of intrusion detection system, motion alarms. We set, as security practitioners, we set timers on when people are not supposed to be in a building, right? So if somebody comes in, on-site personnel should have the ability to have a mobile patrol app or surveillance systems at the palm of their hand to see, oh, somebody's in a building, maybe I should go check on them. The other part of that is, I'm sure that they have janitorial services on site, right? So what does that relationship look like between the security and that janitorial service, or maintenance cleaner, whoever's on site? Again, it goes all back to communication. I mean, you as a security leader have to make sure that you're closing the gap and really doing a thorough risk management assessment on what could go wrong. And if it could go wrong, how do we mitigate that? And those are some of the things that I had in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And liability is a huge concern here, especially when security staff usually in most places is there 24/7. Cleaning staff, is maybe they're in kind of an off hours capacity, but yeah, what should they have done? Where should they have gone? Where should they be looking? There's cultural aspects to that. But Carlos, what you mentioned something before we started recording that was really interesting in regards to liability, and this goes back to your sports entertainment and hospitality security days.
Yeah, I thought a couple things are interesting, and I'll just want to add on a little bit to what Gene said. One of them is, Scott, my story. I wrote a book about it. In the beginning of it, I talk about how hard my mom worked, and I was actually one of those. I would get up 4 a.m. to go clean banks with my mom before going to high school. By the way, I used to be totally embarrassed about this. So for all my people from Cypress Creek High School, they are watching this, my junior year in high school, I was literally waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go help my mom clean businesses. And one of them was a bank in downtown Orlando, SunTrust, the SunTrust building in downtown Orlando. So and it was, if I remember correctly, which I don't care to remember at all, but I think it was like, once a week we were there to clean the office spaces inside. The outside area was cleaned almost every day, but the office spaces were once a week where the cleaning crew came through, and that was literally me, my mom, and my sister Gabby. So that was a cleaning crew. Anyways, so on the second thing, yeah, exactly what you said, Gene. Did they have a contract to security? And let's say they did, or a proprietary, whatever the case might be. Gosh, I really do hope that they're doing those sweeps, and they're doing those sweeps, the way that they're supposed to. But, a thought that I had right away from my resorts and hotel days is new policies that came into place. A lot of them after the shooting that happened in Vegas was, we will enter your room, in some hotels every 24 hours and some hotels every 48 hours, depending on what brand you're in. So even if you put, by the way, everybody, you should know this, even if you put the do not disturb sign while you're staying in your hotel room, their policy is that they're going to get in there at least one time to make sure that, one, you're not stashing things like it was stashed before. But also because of you'd be amazed, because of death. You'd be amazed how many people actually die in hotels. there's a lot of elderly folks and everything else. They'll go and they'll check in. I mean, I'm not going to go deep into those stories. Let's just stick with the policies here. Should we, Scott, have a policy for the company to where, somebody or someone is going through at least every room every day, even if you don't have security? I don't know. Is it the building manager? Is it the facilities manager in some of these? Let's call it a high-rise building that may not have security. Like, what is it that we're doing? And I know that there are industries today that the high safety areas, safety issue areas, they have camera systems and obviously access control systems in place that says, hey, look, you can go in there and work, but if you don't leave that room by 5 p.m., it will alarm and somebody will go look for you because of your safety, right? So do we need to put those things in? And then does a place like, and I'm just looking at some old banks that I remember, do places like, the bank where this incident occurred, didn't even have access control. Sometimes if you just have the front door key, right, where you come in, and then everybody comes in after that. Well, is this something that every banking industry should say, well, I think it's really time for us to be able to monitor the entrance and exit of our people, right? Egress and outbound traffic through access control. So maybe something for the industry to think about, Scotty.
Yeah, that badge in, badge out policy. I think those are good. A lot of employees don't like the badge out aspect, and as we know, there's a lot of tailgating and piggybacking going in and out of the buildings. But to your point, when people would ask me, why do I have to badge out, so that we know that you've left and we don't have to look for you in different areas of the building. But one thing that's interesting with this story is that it comes to mind for me because I had an incident similar to this, but she was a remote worker who had come to the office. So oftentimes you have workers that maybe you've never met before, you've never seen them before. They come to your property for a meeting or maybe they're hot desking, use a Silicon Valley term. And so they just kind of show up and hopefully there is access control where they've got to present a badge. But I had, situations where an employee who was a remote worker came to work early one morning at the headquarters building and tried to get in, and their badge didn't work because we had set Linnell to turn badges off if they hadn't been used in a certain amount of time, 30 days. And so I think, having those kinds of checks and balances in place are really important, because what that made that employee do was go to the badging office and they've got to get a new badge. And then we can kind of update that picture. We can update their credentials. We can talk to them about security. We've got an opportunity there. So,
it's funny that you say that, Scott, about, the technology. One thing that came to mind for me is, most of our vehicles, I have a newer vehicle that I drive, and as I'm driving, if it detects some sort of behavior, it'll always tell you, do you want to take a break, right? So shouldn't we have that same concept, in some of our technology and some of our computers that we have, that if there's a certain keystroke or detection that they're engaged in, and they're the productivity is not there, should there be a notification, hey, just checking in, are you okay, things like that.
Click the yes button, right, or something.
Just something that would and again, it's not to be a big brother, because I can see that being some sort of annoyance to some folks, but I'm looking at how do we make security invisible, right? That's kind of my thought process in that. And really, it's the visibility is the technology behind the scenes, and how do we implement that into our day-to-day operations for our team members. And I think having a message ribbon that comes across in a small corner of the screen or something, just, hey, just checking in, click this, it's just a quick click, that's just ensuring that compliance. Again, just a lot of thoughts that maybe the security industry can help these organizations to protect themselves from these type of issues.
Yeah, Carlos.
Now, I was going to say not to name any companies or anything, but today there's a lot of you ready, quotation, air quotations, AI companies out there in the security industry that are doing a lot of things. And, in AI today, if 3, 4, 5 people are gathering at your front door, it'll alarm. They'll let you know. If somebody falls to the ground or something like that, the camera will alarm and let you know somebody's running, right? Faster than a normal rate of speed that you would find someone, it would alarm. It'd be interesting in these high safety areas that if somebody walks in, they're moving, right? And the pixelity is changing consistently. All of a sudden, the pixelity stops, the person stops, and it doesn't move no more. Because even if you're sleeping, taking a nap at work, not that I've ever done it, but I am sure if I would have ever done it, I might have moved a little bit, right? But somebody doesn't move for a while. Maybe that should be something that companies out there today that are moving towards this AI thing, or machine learning, really. But anyways, maybe they should think about something like that, and for high safety areas. Or maybe, because I'm not deeply in the safety side of the world, it already exists, and please, guys, let me know if I'm wrong. I don't know, but, but we're not doing it. I know we do the opposite. We do all the other stuff I mentioned, but I don't know if we do a non-movement.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. It's exactly what you're talking about, Carlos. I have seen that with different machine learning and object detection recognition, where, to your point, when the pixels stop moving, that it does send an alert. The problem is you got to have somebody to respond and mitigate. That's observe and report, right? And we were talking about this we've talked about this a lot with security, uniform security folks. And when they get an alarm, what do? So to your point, if somebody in a cubicle suddenly puts their head down and doesn't move for a few minutes, where does that alert go? If it doesn't have any place to go, how are we helping our staff and customers? So I think it's got to go someplace. And to your point, Gene, the folks that are going to respond have to be trained in what to do next, and they have to have policies and procedures around that. But Gene, where does audit and assessment come in here at all? The in-house security team needs to make sure that the contract vendor's doing what they say that they're doing.
Right.
What's your experience there?
I mean, it goes back to what Carlos talked about earlier, was really just SLAs and really just defining some of those specific performance metrics, right? So, what are the expectations within that contract? And for me, not to get granular, but I am, because we're paying money. What are some of the patrol frequencies look like, right? What are those response times? What are those reporting standards? And the biggest thing for me is always checking the box on that liability and insurance. That's the biggest deal. And I hope that this company has some sort of exit plan if there is some issues, that they have a termination clause. That's good. That's good. I mean, because when crap hits that fry pan, man, you want to make sure that, hey, you guys messed up and we want out, and what does that look like? And so all that needs to be considered, and especially with budget, of course. But that's the biggest thing for me, that I want to make sure that as a practitioner of the organizations that you serve, that those are being considered.
Yeah, that's a good point. 30-day quit notice in your contract. Carlos, what's your thoughts on that?
I agree. I mean, listen, if you don't have an audit program that comes in right now with the contract itself, you need to get an audit program going. Not only to audit, what. By the way, the contract itself is the vendor doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? Because you can't just totally get that on a QBR every single time. But also an audit program to make sure that they're following your policies, they're following everything that are in place in order for you to operate right, safe and secure, and all these other things are great. An entire audit system for your camera systems, access control systems, you need to have that in place as well, right? You're auditing so many cameras. Now, obviously, all the camera systems now can do a great job of auditing themselves. So the access control systems, they do that themselves, but we need to have a human eye on that every once in a while to make sure it's good. So yes, most definitely a contract audit. We also need the policies audit. We need I mean, all these wonderful things that Gene mentioned to go along with it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of security practitioners don't think about these are what we've been talking about in regards to this policies, procedures, contracts. That those are all business concepts. They're not necessarily things that we learn in security, and I think a lot of security professionals think of themselves as security professionals first, whereas perhaps they should be thinking about themselves as business professionals first, and
Okay.
then security is the product. And I think if we change our perspective and we look at, no, this is, I'm providing a service, or we're, ensuring that a service is done appropriately, correctly, that happens to be security. When you look at it across the board, and everything is security. So, whether it be the contract staff that does security, or the cleaning crew, or the IT team, all of those things I think are different aspects that have security in them. And if we could coordinate better, we should. And we should remember those stakeholders.
I agree. Just like I
Yeah.
was saying, right? Figuring out a contract, just the beginning. What kind of contract do you want? A fixed contract, fixed plus, a fixed contract with raises every year due to some economical changes in the industry, right? Those are all business terms that we need to learn every single day and be part of and really understand. But that's part of being in corporate security, right?
That's
You
right.
gotta learn corporate. So real good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Once again.
Gene, thanks for taking us behind the curtain with security theater. Appreciate you being a
Absolutely.
guest.
Yeah, no, you guys are awesome, and anything we can do as security professionals to strengthen the posture of our world and the people that we serve, I'm happy to do it. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Gene.
Thanks.
Love it. The views expressed in this podcast stems from our passion for the security industry and for the physical security operations. They do not necessarily reflect the views of our employers.